believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Fernandez, also known as Ricky Fernandez, and a great episode for you today. Today is truly a pleasure and truly an honor to have the privilege to have somebody that I've been a fan of for a really long time, since I was a kid, on the podcast. And today we have the singer of Hatebreed, Jamey Jasta. Satisfaction is the Death of Desire was one of my favorite albums growing up. Hatebreed was a huge part of my upbringing, and it really is amazing to have the opportunity to sit down and chat with him. You always hear people say to avoid meeting your idols and people you look up to because you might be disappointed. Well, Jamey is the complete opposite. I had some crazy technical difficulties. The computer crashed. I couldn't figure out what was going on. It took me about 40 minutes to get everything up and going, and he was kind enough to wait. And I'm glad he did, because we end up having an amazing podcast, an amazing episode. So I know you're going to enjoy this. It was also surreal when he shared with me that he listens to The Union of the Unwanted, my other show I co-host with Charlie Robinson, Sam Tripoli, and Midnight Mike. And apparently he listened to the Roseanne Barr episode. So that was pretty cool to think that somebody that I look up to was listening to some of my shows and some of the work that I put out. So it was just all in all a awesome and surreal experience. But of course, before we get into this amazing conversation, let me remind you, this is a value for value show. These type of conversations and podcasts can only happen if you help support the Ripple Effect podcast. And it doesn't have to be financial. Like I always remind you guys, you can rate the show, review the show, tell people about the show, subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're watching or listening to the Ripple Effect podcast. All those little things go a long way in fighting against the algorithms that censor shows and conversations like these. But if you are in a good financial situation, please consider giving some value back financially. You can join our Patreon page, and no donation is too little. If a small percentage of people who listen and watch the Ripple Effect podcast donated as little as $1 a month, I could easily do the show full time. So please consider doing that if you can. We also have a Venmo account if you want to send a one-time donation. We have a PayPal account if you want to send a one-time donation that way. And I recently did get a couple donations via Venmo and PayPal. So thank you so much for that. And if you want a shout out, please let me know when you send a donation, and I'll definitely give you a shout out. Other ways of helping the Ripple Effect podcast is checking out our merch store. We have an awesome merch store run by Big Frog Merch. It's a small family business. He's also a listener and a fan of the podcast. So you can help support a small business and support the Ripple Effect podcast by going to the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com, or you can find all these links and much more in the show description or on the rippleeffectpodcast.com. But the merch is awesome, high quality stuff. The print is amazing. You get it quickly. The prices are really good, and we're constantly uploading new designs and logos. So please check it out. The Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com will take you directly to that merch store. And then we also have, of course, a couple of sponsors. One is Opus Clip. It is an amazing software and service that helps you take long videos and make viral clips out of them. It's what I've been using. So if you check out my TikTok account or Instagram, or if you check out my YouTube clips channel, all those new clips are made by Opus Clips. They use AI to pick out the most interesting parts of your videos. They will even rate them based on how viral they think they will be. You can add music, you can add B-roll, you can add images, you can do so many amazing things. So if you're a content creator, if you're a podcaster, YouTuber, anything like that, or if you just want to make clips out of somebody else's content that you enjoy, use the link in the show description and get started today with making viral videos. The other sponsor I want to mention is one that has been loyal to the show for a long time, and I can't thank them enough for always supporting my work and making sure you can find all my videos on many different video platforms. even after I got kicked off YouTube, and that's Content Safe. Matt from Content Safe has an amazing service that syncs all your video channels together. So I only have to upload my thumbnail and description to one location. Then magically, in a couple hours, that video, thumbnail, description is uploaded to all the other video platforms I have channels on, like Band.video, Minds, BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, and many others. Finally, that's it. Enjoy this amazing conversation with hardcore and metal legend Jamey Jasta, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.
All right.
I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Dude, this is I started in 2013, so just a tad before you started your show. That's literally the first time I've had technical issues, but first time that's ever happened. Zoom would not let me get into my own account. If for some reason it turned off, and it wouldn't work for you either.
No, Zoom is the worst. I guess we've switched over mostly to StreamYard, but the patrons, they're always asking for a Zoom link. I hate Zoom because then they always come on with the mics on and their video on, even though we tell them like, and I don't know, maybe your account just maybe it overloaded them having the people in there or something. I don't know.
Well, because
Zoom seems to always have problems.
I host that show right there, right behind me. That's Sam Tripoli. It's a roundtable show that I host with Sam Tripoli, Charlie Robinson from Macroaggressions, and Midnight Mike, and it's a huge roundtable show. I mean, we started during COVID. We were gathering people in the alternative media community that were being censored, and we have shows that have like 30 people on. You know,
With no issue on Zoom.
not on Zoom, yeah, because
Yeah.
I host all of it, and it's like never have.
Oh yeah. Because you guys I listened to one with Roseanne,
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, look.
right?
Yeah. Roseanne was on that one, on one of the episodes. Yeah, it was hilarious because Roseanne was having technical issues, so she calls in using her landline, and and I'm like, dude, her number is on the screen, so we're like panicking because we're like, dude, we're live streaming and her number's on the screen. So that was like, one of those moments where like, what do we do? And so luckily we end up removing the live stream and then just uploading it with it covered. But we've had that happen quite a few times. It's just like when you play in a band, you know how like you set everything up and you're like, oh, everything sounds great. We're good to go. And the second you start playing, everything's fucked up and you're like, panicking because you're like, how do we fix this? And still continue the show. That was always like the worst part of playing music.
For sure. Yeah, no, when I first got this new space, I dropped out on Chuck Billy episode. I dropped out on a couple big episodes where it was like 5, 10 minutes troubleshooting on the phone with the producer. That's why I've really been liking the in-person episodes. I've done a couple now at Gas, gone into New York. Like I have a new one coming out with Randy from Lamb of God. And it was just so nice to just do a little pre-production meeting, get everybody in there and not have any issues. And then also be able to say like, okay, let's trim the fat or let's, we put up the audio on Patreon first. If there's any stories or anything that we know can't go on YouTube, or if there's any clips, like any music that, will get flagged on Apple Music. So, but even with that, you can't broadcast it over Zoom or StreamYard. We haven't figured that out. So that's going to be the next thing for subscribers is like figure out how to do it for the in-person guests at the new Gas Digital Studios.
Yeah, and well, I got kicked off YouTube during COVID, so now I'm just on. I wanted to have a foot in that realm in that world, so I started a clips channel, and I don't know if you use Opus Clips or not, but that boy, it saves a lot of time because I hate listening to myself, and now it does.
Yeah.
Hard work for me, but I do have a guy if you're interested because I know that like obviously your show is huge, it's blown up and just you seem to continue to want to expand it. So during COVID we had a guy, his name's Matt Raymore. He started Content Safe and he was just a huge podcast fan. We had a mutual friend, Richard Grove from the Grant That World podcast, and he's a author, filmmaker. He's done a bunch of stuff, but he's like a lot of us were getting kicked off YouTube. And he had this company that he was starting. He's like, hey, we'll use you as like a test company or a product because he listens to your show and he's a fan. So he hooked me up with him. And what he does is, and it's funny because there's no other service like it. What he does is so similar to how you upload your audio to one platform, right? So you have a host podcast website like Podomatic or Audio Boom or whoever, and then it sends it to all the platforms. He does the same thing, but with video. So I upload at the time I was still on YouTube. I was getting strike, but I was still on YouTube. So I was uploading to YouTube my video, my thumbnail, my description, all that stuff to, posted as a episode. Then within a couple hours, that same episode is uploaded to my Rumble channel, my Minds channel, my BitChute channel, my everything channel. I'm on Band.video. I'm missing probably a couple Odyssey. And it was great
Great.
because that way it say because obviously uploading video is much more time consuming, and it was a great service. So he was kind of getting it started, and he was really motivated by helping out the people who were getting censored because he's like, you need a kind of a footprint in all these platforms because if you do get kicked off one or the other, or if one has an agenda and doesn't like what you're talking about or whatever, at least that way you're kind of everywhere, And so I love that, but I can hook you up with him. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to help. And he's a bit of a metal guy like we are. So and right, yeah,
Great.
one thing I wanted first of all, this what sucks about everything going wrong at the beginning of the show is that I'm such a fan. So satisfaction to death of desire is one of my. It's actually a quote that I use all the time, and people don't realize it's a Hatebreed album. I'm like, and then I always end up saying I'm like, hey, and that's also a Hatebreed album you should check out. But I had that T-shirt
Thank you.
with the album. The crazy thing about work, like musicians and any artists, is that the only thing that lasts longer than our physical selves is our legacy and our work that we put out there. And it's absolutely amazing to have albums like that were a huge impact on me. And you have another one, Fear Factory, right there, which was a pleasure to have Burton C. Bell, another legend in the metal world. And we're similar in age. What we're from similar parts of the world. I'm from Massachusetts, close to the Connecticut border, and we have a huge influence of or a huge just metal and hardcore kind of scene around here when I was growing up. And I loved that. I was very proud of it. And, bands like yourself and other East Coast bands that I think were killing it just had a huge, huge impact on, I think, a lot of our lives. So I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, that's awesome, man. No, I really appreciate it. And when you were talking about getting the video content spread out over these different platforms, it was making me think about how we really need to do that with the music videos and with some of the content around, say, the tours, whether it's a tour video, bands with any sort of name that can be tripped up by the algorithm, whether it's Cannibal Corpse, Hatebreed, Suicidal Tendencies, Terror, anything that either includes a word that's gonna get flagged in the algorithm or be shadow banned. Like I did a record for Corpse Grinder, and we used a really big animator, a mainstream animator. Spent a lot of money on the video, and I thought, well, we're going to have more reach with this because it's not called Cannibal Corpse, especially in places like Germany and other places in the world that heavily censor bands like Cannibal Corpse, and especially on YouTube, right? Like if you're in Germany, you're not going to be suggested any of those videos. But what we made a mistake in doing with the animated video was we put Corpse Grinder doing his trademarked hair windmill killing Epstein with his hair windmill. And once people started commenting about Epstein getting killed in the animated video, even though it was animated, boom, we were shadow banned. And so a video that should have got 5 million views, I think pissed out at around 300,000. And I did think, man, maybe we should put this on Band.video or Rumble or, well, now on X. I just put my most recent video, Suicidality, for the and Jasta for All record, which I should have known better going into that, especially because it's about the pharmaceutical industry. The song is about all the side effects of all these drugs that are pushed on kids. So that got a warning right away. Well, I shouldn't say right away. It got like 25,000, 30,000 views, and then it got slapped with a warning, and then it was just now you can't even really find it. So as we learn, these workarounds, we need to be aware of this so that way we can keep reaching, even though it's fragmented, like the podcast, like you were saying, you're going to reach people on each of those platforms, and maybe 1,000 people then turns into 5,000 or 6,000. And luckily with metal, you get 5,000, 6,000 people on a video, you could end up selling 10, 20, 30% of those people the physical, which, everybody told me, oh, physical's dead. And I think I've sold more CDs and vinyl this year than I ever had. So if anybody's interested, the album's called Jasta for All, and it's fair use. So no lawsuits from Lars yet. And it's just a love letter to thrash. But like a lot of the old thrash, like Megadeth and a lot of those early bands, there's themes and lyrical content on here that is not going to fly on YouTube, and it's not going to fly with the current censorship regime.
Yeah, it's we were talking about on the initial Zoom uh call that the thing about the metal scene, it's same thing. I have this similar issues with like athletes where if there's a really like thought-provoking athlete I want to have on, they're very hesitant to come on a show like this that's kind of open to discuss everything. And the thing is, like we were saying before, like I'm open to talk to anybody and anyone, and you're kind of the same way. I mean, Sam Tripoli's the same way, our mutual friend. I know he was on your show, you were on his show. I know when the Guitars of Deftones was on that show, it made big splashes, and he kind of got some headline news because of it. Did you get any when you hooked up with Sam and kind of going down the rabbit hole of like the moon and some of the other conspiratorial stuff? Did you get any backlash from the fans?
I didn't, but I think with the Steph episode, I got a lot more. And maybe with the episode with Flat Earth Dave, all three of those episodes did really well. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people at the meet and greets or had people at shows or outside the bus say, "Thank you for turning me on to Sam." So I think in a weird way, we both helped each other reach new audiences, because whenever I go on Cash Daddies, or even when I was on his show way back when, it was at a time when the worlds weren't really colliding. Now it's way more, I guess it's way more often, especially with me being on Gas Digital, and going, like recently I was on Legion of Skanks, and all my numbers shot up from that. And it really made me think I do need to start doing more, because the podcasting world is kind of the workaround to the typical sort of PR route for music and tours and merchandising. And it's a shame, because we used to spend a lot of money with Google, and we used to spend a lot of money with Meta, and we wanted to reach our own fans. But this is why I'm telling bands now, it's like, you have to, get your own domain, get your own email list, pay for it, protect it. If you trade with other bands, you need to do obviously an opt-in email, because people don't want to be spammed, and there's new laws and they're cracking down on that. That's really tough. If you're doing contests with brands, or if you're lucky enough to get a good sponsor, you want to make sure that if you're going to do an email list trade, that you're doing this opt-in, so people aren't like, what the fuck, my email's being sold, by some band I'm not even affiliated with. So there's a lot of new stuff to learn. There's a lot of stuff to navigate, but just by doing my festival, if anybody wants to get tickets, go to metalfest.com, Milwaukee Metal Fest. We've run a bunch of contests, got a bunch of new sponsors, and we'll probably end up doing some comedy. We'll probably end up doing some live podcasts there, and hopefully just continue this synergy between podcasting, music, comedy, and even films, right? Like I had Rory Culkin on, Macaulay Culkin's brother. He did a black metal film, and that was a big episode. People didn't really like the film, but I enjoyed it, and it was a really interesting episode. And then I probably could have had Macaulay on, and I blew it. But who knows? Maybe he'll come. He was right down the road. They were doing a tour, but I wasn't set up here yet. So
Where are you located now?
I'm just north of North Haven.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I live in right outside of Springfield, Mass.
Yeah, so you know the deal. Like any of these venues, we get so many great tours coming through and so many great artists. I Back in the day when I first started it, when I was audio only, I could go to Mohegan and get Jim Norton on the show or get Aaron Lewis on the show. I could go to Oakdale and get Lemmy from Motorhead or Scotty Ian from Anthrax. Now it's going to be hopefully easier to just send a car service or send a runner and then bring them over here to the studio, and hopefully, yeah, do more in-persons or just keep going into New York and get them in at gas, because it's not as busy as it was. Like you used to be able to get guests that were also going to be there for a promo tour. Like if they were going to go in and maybe do um, Sirius satellite radio and then do the rounds, maybe go on Eddie Trunk's show. But like you said, with the athletes, like I've done that where, went and had Kimbo Slice on the show, or I spoke to Chael Sonnen, or anybody coming into Bristol that I knew was going to be promoting something on ESPN. I could try to piggyback that. But yeah, um, we're seeing more and more now. You got to just be more DIY with it, and you got to build up the email list, be able to reach the fans directly. But I'm also optimistic because Dana White's on the board now at Meta, and I've noticed that like since everything changed over, we've gotten 100,000 new likes on the Hatebreed Facebook, which was literally at a million whatever for 10 years, never went up. And it was because we knew we were being actively throttled or quote unquote deboosted, shadow banned, whatever, because of the name.
Yeah, that definitely happens. I know there's a lot of people out there who just say they're shadow banned because they put out like 5 episodes and nobody's listening. But there's actual shadow banning going on, especially when it comes down to pharma stuff. Zach Voorhees, who is the Google whistleblower, he's been on a bunch, and he's been on both shows, Union Unwanted and this show, and he talked about when he whistleblowed and went to Project Veritas and shared his story. That was some of the most censored stuff, was the big pharma stuff. That was the stuff that they were really locking down on. And then you saw it during COVID. And I remember when I had Mickey Willis on, who did the pandemic documentary, that show disappeared from you or from iTunes. The one I did with Del Bigtree during COVID, I had him on before. It seemed to be censored, but it wasn't like super obvious. Some people were saying they couldn't find it. But then during COVID, it just wasn't there. So it throughout the years, it seems like that was the thing that happened the most. And it's amazing that a band like Cannibal Corpse is as well known as they are, because that name, you figure like, yeah, algorithms are not helping that. But it's
They're in no playlist. They're not in one playlist on Spotify.
did you see that Danny Jones podcast? He wears a Cannibal Corpse shirt all the time. It's a huge podcast.
Really? Is he a Florida guy?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, he might be located right by those guys. Yeah, and when I did George's record, I thought for sure we could target Cannibal Corpse fans in the advertising, in all the, whether it was on X or Meta or Google or any of the social media outlets, TikTok and whatnot, because George has gone viral for good reason. Like he's gone viral for the charity work that he's done with Toys for Tots and other toy drives, because he's like the Rain Man of claw toys or claw contests. What do you call those? Claw machines, where you go in and literally he can win on every single one. So it's interesting. I guess now we're seeing it play out where some of these bans and some of these deboostings are getting lifted, and I'll take whatever I can get. Like I put that suicidality video up on my X and I got another 8, 9,000 views. But that week that it premiered on X, I was getting orders all day, every day. So now it's like, do you put money behind it to get more views, or do I put up George's video on X on the label channel? Also, I worked with Tim Ripper Owens, and I just executive produced an album from Keith Buckley, who was the singer of Every Time I Die. And they're going out on a tour this month. And it's like, yeah, if you want to cut through the noise, if you want to get seen, you have to figure out ways to either geo-target or target other bands' fans and keywords, but it's not easy. Like you go in and you can select Slayer, or you can't select Megadeth, which is really weird. We tried because we did a tour with Megadeth, and we were like, how do we market to their fans and say, hey, get to the shows early? Which we didn't end up needing to do. We ended up playing to at least 4,000 or 5,000 people a night, which was incredible. But we knew that we were deboosted or shadow banned on a lot of the social accounts, because if you're playing to 4,000 or 5,000 people a night and you're not getting one new like, but you've sold in the tens and twenties, $30,000 in one night in merch, but no one goes and tries to find your social media, there's an issue.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not a fair playing field. And if you're an artist, if you're a podcaster, filmmaker, whatever it may be, it sucks that you have to, if I guess you want to get some traction, you almost are forced to have to mold your content to the algorithms. And there's plenty of books and people who have found like hacks for like YouTube algorithms and whatnot. Actually, somebody who's a huge Hatebreed fan has two tattoos. His name was Finn. The punk rock MBA YouTube channel. He
Yeah.
he came out recently and just like, hey, I'm just doing videos on these crappy bands because I knew that these would hit, and it worked. He would do. He did a lot of like new metal stuff, and he would do like certain bands. In some way, he figured out how to hack the system. Like, how do I, do videos about these specific bands that he's not even really interested in, but he knew would hit. And like, that kind of sucks that, that in some cases people have to do that just to get traction.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something earlier that reminded me just about the sort of current state of the censorship when it comes to the pharma stuff. And I want to say it was John Joseph I had on who used to sing for the Cro-Mags. The episode, he said a family's name that I won't say on this, but literally the episode was gone. And the algorithm and it's a small world, and people talk, and there are people just like us that are protecting what I'm sure is millions of dollars. So they're going to go hard and they're going to go far to make sure that they can keep those millions coming in. And so anybody that's going to combat that is going to be a target. And it was crazy to me. That was the first time that I was like, wow, this is a really corrupt system. But at the same time, I was also benefiting from that system because I was getting a lot of views and not I didn't need to be monetized because I had my own sponsors that were embedded in. So I didn't need the video, but now that they shut that down real quick. So like I'll be lucky if I get 5, 10, 20,000 views on a podcast. Really all my listens are on Apple and Spotify. But even then, there's dynamic insertion ads, which I don't know if I'm getting a cut of that. I have to look into that. I know people complain about the ads, but it's a strange climate that we're in, because you can put your content up and then who knows, someone can put a dynamic insertion ad for fucking McDonald's, and you could just be like a vegan podcast, and then your fans are like, what the fuck is this? So I do think if you can get a base and you can get a following, the more you can do it on your own and have it on a private SoundCloud or on a Patreon, that's the best route. Because even if you say you got flagged on Patreon, there's a CSV or an Excel that you can convert of all those emails, and you can reach out to those people directly and say, okay, hey, I'm no longer here, but I make my own paywall or whatever. And I saw that early on in comedy. and that really inspired me. I remember buying a Louis C.K. special for $5, and it was the easiest thing I ever did. I clicked buy, the $5 came out of my PayPal. I saw the little file loading, and boom, I had an hour special shot beautifully, high res. And I thought, this is how we got to do the Hatebreed DVD. I reached out to those people. They quoted me an exorbitant price, and we obviously didn't do it. We did the standard, DVD release through Best Buy or whatever. But even then, you have to pay for programs, you have to pay for marketing, you have to take a big advance, and then you have to recoup that advance. But we're coming into this new era where there's going to be less gatekeepers and there's going to be less middlemen, and I think that's going to really, I think it's going to create some cool scenarios for artists and podcasters, comedians alike to get the content directly to people and not have so many hands taking a piece of the pie.
Yeah, and that's a concern that a lot of musicians have. It's like, what's the future looks like? What does it look like? And then how do we get, I guess, a make a living, putting out the products and the art that people are enjoying. Like if you're getting value, then, I do the Adam Curry thing. I love his whole, value for value thing. I always tell people, like, you get value out of my show. If you can, try to give some value back if you can. And it doesn't necessarily mean, there's a lot of ways people can support artists, even if it's not financial. Obviously, we live in like crazy financial times. So it's like, hey, you can rate a show, tell people about the show, share it on your platforms and any of the social media platforms you're on. That's an easy, inexpensive way of kind of fighting back against the algorithms that like do censor anybody who's open-minded and willing to talk about whoever and whatever. But yeah, the big pharma thing, especially both of us being like New England East Coasters, we during the OxyContin, whole dilemma, Hulu had a great documentary about it. Painkillers was really good too. These series about like just how crazy it was that big pharma was literally getting the doctors to repeat that their product wasn't addictive while everybody was overdosing on it. And I would tell people, I'm like, go watch this. I'm like, don't worry about these other things. Don't worry about vaccines. Don't worry about this. I'm like, how about you just watch this? Because this is like undeniable, undebatable. This is a scenario. This will really happen. And the way this happened with this product, it happens with all these products. And like I always tell people, we keep talking about like, how do we make healthcare more affordable? How do we, this? It's like, how about we ask the question, like, why do we need so much healthcare? Why are there so many unhealthy people out there? Why do, when, I forget which comedian said it, but they talked about how, like, back in the day when you went to your doctor, they used to ask you, hey, are you on any prescription drugs? Today they ask, how many prescription drugs are you on?
Right.
It's like times have changed so drastically, and nobody even thinks about, how we've just accepted this to be a casual lifestyle, and then open those inserts. Tons of warnings, tons of side effects. One of two countries in the world that us in New Zealand that let you market pharmaceutical drugs on TV. And yet, like, nobody thinks that's weird. And nobody thinks that, like, even during the OxyContin epidemic, and I'm sure you probably have friends and family and loved ones that were directly impacted by that because everybody in the East Coast did. There was not
Oh
one.
yeah, I mean our old guitar player Lou, I mean that's what killed him. And he went even as far as to really fight me on wanting to thank OxyContin in the liner notes. And I said, dude, don't do this, man. Like this is you're gonna influence other kids. And I said this stuff, it could come out down the line that this stuff is like any of the stuff that we've seen in the past that's marketed as like this miracle drug, and then it's recalled. And you can use all these examples, Vioxx and all these other one. I mean, even like talcum powder. I mean, you can go. I'm sure everyone that's listening to your shows has heard these things 100 fucking times, but there are people that they're not getting that message. And when I did the song Suicidality, it was out of frustration for, these kids that are pushed onto these SSRIs and all this stuff. And I think maybe down the line we will see that these drugs get pulled off the market, especially the ones that are being now slowly proven to cause suicidal and homicidal tendencies and thoughts and suicidal ideation. And I've known many people who have committed suicide and they were on some of these, but that's a very touchy subject. And that's something that will get you thrown off of YouTube quick. And so, again, it's like if you're going to have these types of discussions, you have to have an email list, you have to hint to it, you have to have workarounds, and then you also have to have the the focus and the ability to really read through a lot of the paperwork. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't have time. But if it's your kid, if it's your sister, if it's your mother, it's worth it, especially if you think they're prone to one of these really, really negative side effects.
I hate to say it, but Tom Cruise was right when he had that debate, and everybody
And
thought,
you saw how quickly they went to really mock him and demonize him everywhere. And you can take the Scientology stuff totally out of it. And but they will also use that to discredit him, right? Because that's another uh I guess a taboo subject where you can be in the crosshairs of them if you say the wrong thing. So I get it. It's like there's not enough hours in the day to really focus on all this stuff. You need to just be cognizant of the stuff that you can change around you, your circle, your inner circle, and the people within that. And even then, they might be the toughest ones, the toughest nuts to crack, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners have dealt with. But I say, just call me spoiler alert, because some of this stuff we say now, and then they all come like later on. Oh, dude, wow, you were really onto something. Well, hey, I've been seeing this stuff since I was a kid. My father was in Vietnam. A lot of people in our age bracket, we already we already knew the fucked up shit that was happening in the 70s. And then when these guys came back and started families, families were obviously affected by tons of issues, whether it was PTSD and the fallout from that, or Agent Orange, which is obviously created by Monsanto. And it's real. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's actually real and it's documented. And these companies, before the laws were changed, they paid out the vets. They paid out mainly the women. They got paid out. It's some crazy statistic of women who are exposed to Agent Orange having kids with spinal bifida in the hundreds of thousands. So you see this insane amount of spinal bifida happening. Well, who's it happening to? Women that were stationed in these areas where they were exposed. And they did get a settlement from the VA. They did get a settlement, I think, from Monsanto, and then the laws were changed.
yeah, that stuff happens all the time. I had the attorney from the film Dark Waters, and it was about the DuPont case. He worked with Robert Kennedy Jr. and it's a great film based on a true story about how DuPont was like hiding this research that the I think it was called C8, the product they were using for the nonstick pans, and it was just a moneymaker of a product or a compound that they were using for tons of different products. And but it could cause cancer if it gets in your food. When that stuff comes off your pans and you get it into your food, it can cause cancer. They knew it. They hid it. Obviously, when they got sued, they had to disclose that in court. And but that's the thing about corporations. Like, so often we make it a left-right thing. It's like, the left blames corporations for everything. The right blames government for everything. I'm like, it's just people. There's corrupt people everywhere. And, there's evidence that, both can be the issue and both can solve the issue. And so, I go both ways with that. But without a doubt, I mean, there's so much around us that is negatively affecting us, from, clothes that we wear to paint to, there was that study where in New York when they removed all, and you might know about this, when they removed all the unleaded paint from the walls and, basically banned it from New York, that the crime rate went down. It was having psychological effects on people. And so, I mean, just think about that. And, they're just, but yet they want to give you, like you said, these antidepressants and all this stuff, which, by the way, if you're on antidepressant, it's because you don't want to be suicidal. And when the antidepressant side effect, one of them is suicide, maybe you should think about taking it.
Yeah.
And there's a great documentary called Making a Killing. and it's about the history of the DSM and these psychological drugs. And I didn't know because I actually had some doctors from that documentary on, and they didn't know either. But the company that funded that documentary was actually linked to Scientology. And I remember I'm like, dude, I keep recommending this documentary and it's linked to Scientology. I'm like, nobody's gonna, watch it. And then I went back and rewatched it. And I'm like, everything in there's true though. I'm like, they call it a chemical imbalance. They never test you for a chemical. They call it science, but there's no science involved. You're a guinea pig. Like this pill.
Right. There's no brain scan.
No.
You're prescribing stuff for the brain, and you're not even getting a brain scan. I know because I've done neurofeedback, and actually I had a record called Supremacy that I had a pretty lengthy liner notes about depression and about um, dealing with it, and I was told to edit it, to not actually say certain things, and then when I was doing the press for that record and was talking about stuff that I knew I could apply, even back then, and this is going way back. Even back then, you were looked at crazy if you were to say, well, have you tried rhodiola? Have you tried saffron? Have you tried magnesium? A vigorous exercise. Okay, have you looked at your thyroid? Have you looked at these other issues? Have you any stored trauma? Do you have generational trauma? For me, obviously dealing with my father being in Vietnam, coming home, needing to, be locked away at the VA for psychiatric evaluations and things like that. Going through the VA system and getting my own therapy as a very young child, I saw these things that not a lot of people see. And when they do, they understand it, but it's up to you to explain this to people, and so that they know, you're not jumping on some sort of bandwagon. You're not just being anti this company or anti that company. You have a personal anecdote. And although it's anecdotal, there's good reason to be skeptical, and there's good reason to apply different things when you see sometimes the quote unquote cure is worse than the disease. And also sometimes they're just doing this stuff anyways, but they've gotten a more distilled version, or they have somehow patented a different variation of a molecule that is derived from one of these natural compounds. But I think with the amount of time that some of these companies have been around, and you go, okay, this company's been around 100 something years, they've never cured one disease. Meanwhile, you have people out there, homeopathic doctors being silenced, and internists and holistic practitioners that are actually really helping people cure themselves of autoimmune issues, of depression, of anxiety, of all sorts of eczema and things that are really debilitating to people, to the point where they isolate, and they may not, meet someone or go out and socialize because of these various issues. And we're seeing it more and more now. So I really hope that some of that can change, and who knows, maybe with some of these boards changing, with some of the people in the higher up positions in local and national and federal government, maybe we'll start getting not such a one-sided, treats all type of thing, because it's really comes down to the individual. Everybody's different, and you really need individual care that's specialized, especially when it's, when you haven't had a brain scan, when you haven't had your hormones tested, when you haven't had your blood tested. It's not a one size fits all type of thing where it's like, okay, we're going to put all these kids on Ritalin, or we're going to put all these depressed people on Cymbalta or whatever. You need to really look into it, and sometimes you got to push back too. That's another thing. I do like, there's people out there that are advocating for doctors to listen more and be aware that there are other avenues that people are having success with. Don't be dismissive of people when they come in and they have a history of this stuff and they've done their own research. That's you're not supposed to be offended by that. If you're a doctor, you're supposed to listen and see if there's anything you can add. But a lot of times doctors can be very judgmental and dismissive when someone comes in and says, you know what, maybe I don't want to go on Prozac. Maybe I don't want to go on this, whatever untested, drug that they just came out with 5 years ago.
It's absolutely true. I got kicked out of my pediatrician's office and then got a letter in the mail saying I'm not welcomed back because since my kids were born, they were kept trying to vaccinate them. And I kept saying, I was being polite. I would always be, give them oh, we're going to wait type of thing. Cause I'm like, okay, maybe they will get the picture. We kind of, they kind of get, we've been saying we're going to wait for years and never vaccinated them once. And then they just got pushier and pushier. And then finally, I got in a debate with one of them. And like you said, some of them have huge egos. They're the ones with the big PhD on the wall. They don't want some kid who barely graduated high school telling them, that they know some information that they might not know or they haven't looked into. And and I've always been very passionate about vaccines because especially when I had kids, it was one of those things where like it's a huge choice and it's a huge decision. And
also, what about a compromise? Like what about, okay, I hear what you're saying. You know what? Let's do these two or let's do these three. Let's skip Gardasil. Let's skip Hep C. Why is my kid, what is my kid gonna be fucking backstage with Motley Crue, fucking snorting cocaine out of $1? Why does she need the Hep C? Like, why does it have to be all or nothing? They must know, any intelligent person must know that is not a good idea, especially when it's a baby. Like, there's no discussion. There's no,
they
like,
want you to
okay,
wash your hands. They want you to wash your hands before you go see a newborn, but it's completely okay to just shoot them up with a bunch of stuff. And it's like you're admitting that they have very sensitive immune systems. You don't. I use this analogy all the time. I know the listeners are going to hate it because I use it all the time, but it's a perfect one. If I mandated peanut butter for every newborn in the world, some kids are going to have allergic reactions. Some of them might even die. Peanut butter is pretty harmless for most people, but if I mandated one thing for everybody, that's what would happen. So this idea when people debate or argue with people saying, no, it doesn't cause this or it doesn't, I'm like, you're telling me that it's safer than peanut butter? Because peanut butter has side effects.
speaking of peanut butter, look at the peanut butter shot that the GIs get, that the Army recruits get. My niece went in and got that shot and now is having issues. Luckily now she got an honorable discharge, but that was scary to me to think that you have no say in that. You're going in and they got to give you this shot. And anybody who's ever gone and gotten a shot at a CVS or at any of your doctors growing up, anybody who knows, any nurse, that sometimes this stuff sits out. You don't know where it's coming from. You don't know the efficacy, especially if it's a generic. There's a range of any medicine. And this is just you can talk to a doctor, you can talk to the nurse. Don't talk to the heavy metal band guy. All I'm doing is parroting what doctors and nurses have told me. There's a range of efficacy for every one of these products, whether it's a pill or a shot. And these things are shipped. They're put in a barge or they're made and then they're put on a truck. And then sometimes the trucks, the refrigeration breaks down or they sit out in the sun too long and whatever. So it's like, you want to be careful with this stuff. You're not being some tinfoil hat wearing freak by questioning it or even asking for a slight compromise. I think any amount of healthy skepticism is good, but you also need to be very strategic with it and very careful with it because like you said, you'll get a disinvitation or whatever. What'd you say? They sent you a letter of will they part ways with you? They don't want your business anymore.
Yeah, it was they were breaking up with me. They didn't yeah, but you're right, you called it a business. There was a stand-up comedian that opened up to and by the way, our mutual friend Sam actually the last couple years he started coming to it's in Broadbrook, Connecticut. I think it's near Windsor. But he every year he comes with XG and Eddie Bravo and they do a show there. He was
They're
there.
yeah, I'm always on the road when they come. Yeah, shout out to XG and Eddie. That I did Florentine do that place or Don Jameson, one of those guys. There's like a booming upstart comedy scene in all these little pockets of uh of New England, and I love that. That's how the scene was with music, and it was always better in the off the beaten path places. Like we could play Willimantic, you could play Fitchburg, you could play Chicopee, you could play Northampton, you could even go and play Brattleboro or go play Plattsburgh or Burlington or Cohoes or Middletown or Troy. And there was scenes, and I think it needs to go back to that. I actually went up and saw John Five in like I want to say Torrington or some I don't know Stafford Springs. It might have been Stafford Springs. It's a great little theater. And when I was there talking with one of the staff, they were saying how all these little towns had vaudeville theaters, and a lot of those theaters are still around. And our drummer in Hatebreed, Matt, his parents and grandparents have connections to vaudeville, mainly his grandparents. And so that was a great circuit that those entertainers could travel on. And we did that in the 90s. We'd go to Port Chester. We would go to Brewster, New York. We would go to, I mean, of course, we'd play all the five boroughs as well. We'd play the Bronx, we'd play Yonkers, we'd play Queens, we'd play Brooklyn. We'd even play Staten Island. And we need to do more of that now because there's less and less people in that 25 to 45 age range that want to go into the big cities. They don't want to go into Boston, get a ticket or pay for parking or deal with the fucking traffic. They don't want to go into New York City. And we're finding that, you get more people when you play the off the beaten path places. So I love when I see Sam and those guys doing those spots because I'll probably do that with the live podcast too. Like I definitely want to go to Skankfest this year. Everybody's going to be there from Gas, so I'll probably go down and do a live Jasta show there, or maybe try to hook up with Sam, or try to hook up with even with Howie. Like I got to talk to Lewis and see what the plan is because they always do a big pre-party with some metal or some rock. They've done ICP, they've done Seven Dust, they've done a bunch of great stuff with Skankfest. So I'll probably go down for that, and that's going to be in New Orleans, which New Orleans is another one that's getting to be very touristy and very busy and very overcrowded. But I think for that festival, it'll be great.
Yeah.
It's in November too.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. They well, it's funny, Adam Curry was on JRE today and I listened to a little bit of it. And speaking of the Western Mass was actually going viral today. I don't know if you saw the clip of like the town hall meeting. They were talking about it on JRE in Worcester. There's some town hall meeting, a bunch of transgender advocates were there. I mean, this looked like the Insane Clown Posse. If you look at the way some of them were dressed and looked, and they're over here trying to be serious and trying to convince the public that like they need you. I honestly don't even know what it was because I was trying to get ready for this show and I didn't listen to much of it. But there's a viral video of this bunch of people makeup all and I'm like, oh my God, like. Growing up, I remember loving to go to Northampton, like as a kid, because it was just a cool place, a lot of interesting little shops or whatnot, and like kind of these hipster type of areas. And now as an adult, especially with like little kids of my own, I can't, like, I can't look at cities like that the same way anymore. It's just, I look at all these adults and I'm like, I don't know. Like my perspective has changed. Has yours changed at all? In some of these.
I try to live every day, like go out and just treat people as best as I can and judge the individual character. Because as a metalhead or a hardcore guy or a punk rock guy, any of the phases I ever went through, people always give me the benefit of the doubt. And even when they didn't, even when we've had, issues with CNN and, the ADL, wrote us an apology when we got when we got wrongly accused of being a band with a hateful agenda. You know, they didn't even give us the chance to yeah, they didn't even Google the lyrics or give us a chance to say what we're about. But there's bad people in every group, and you got to vibe with your tribe, and you got to know where you got to get in where you fit in. So like, yeah, if you know if you know there's going to be a huge uh pride parade in Northampton, which I have seen and I've been there, and you know the community I think views me as an ally. But they also know that if I'm going to go there with my little kids or with my nephew or something, like, yeah, like let's not have dicks swinging and fucking um, music on fucking 250 blaring everywhere, you know, making people go deaf. You have to use discernment, right? And but because we come from a world of extremes, I can see why people would also say, well, then, yeah, like I don't want to take my kid to a Hatebreed show, or especially like I don't want to take my kid to a Cannibal Corpse show. I remember on Hatebreed Cannibal Corpse tour, a lot of parents were saying, I'm not taking my kids to that. And it was fine. You know, they're not up there raping people, they're singing about it, but it's like a horror movie in music form. They're not advocating that, just like I'm sure 99% of the people in the Pride Parade are not advocating for exposing themselves to youngsters or, you know, grooming people or whatever the you know the buzzword to generalize everybody is. Um, but you know, again, it's like you have to have a grace period. You have to have compromise, and you got to know where you know, where you're welcome or where you fit in. And I could get along with anybody. I've been like we've done tours where we go play um like Muslim countries during Ramadan, and people are freaking out. People are writing me on social media, people are writing me emails, calling me, freaking out. And yeah, you go there and you get the bomb sniffing dogs around the bus, around the cars, around the cabs. They're searching, they're coming in, security's in your hotel room, they're looking everywhere. But not once did I worry that some, you know, Islamic terrorist was going to blow us up because of the name of the band or whatever. But I realized there's probably one or two of them out there that might want to, but I'm not. I have to judge each person individually that I deal with, and the majority, literally 99.9% of the people in those countries, um, were just amazing, and they loved the music. I mean, there's people moshing in burqas and circle pitting in burqas, and you're like, and it was amazing that in that province or that town or that city that was even allowed, right? Because there's other countries that are super strict where they don't want any of that. They don't want moshing, they don't want music, they don't want anything um, that's not state controlled, whether it's music, movies. And we're seeing that more and more. You're going to see that more and more where you'll find out certain artists are paid by certain countries through other apparatuses in the state to promote an agenda.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm always weary of it, even with the independent podcasting and stuff, and with the algorithms. I'm always weary of stuff like that. Like, why is that whatever town meeting in Worcester? Why is that being pushed out, and why is that cutting through? Is there an agenda behind that?
That is something that people should always be skeptical of is why are you being shown one thing, not another thing? Is it real hysteria? Is it, you know, kind of inflated hysteria? Is it, you know, there's always agendas behind everything. The Mike Benz episode of JRE recently, and anytime Mike Benz is on any show, people should listen because all these nonprofit organizations, non-government organizations, they basically are just a big CIA umbrella company that do all these things that you're referring to, like push certain artists that seem like real artists, but they have maybe political agendas or world views that kind of help whatever
or even just influence and reach, because that's a currency that's hard to quantify. And if there's any sort of personal alignment, right, like to a cause, and that's cutting through, I do wonder. And listen, people will be skeptical of me. They can say, "Oh, well, Jasta, you took money from Monster, for instance, right?" And I'm off the energy drinks, just and I don't get a check anymore. But I used those checks and reinvested in my business and helped smaller artists. And it was a great time while it lasted. And I did go to the higher ups as much as I could. I did go to my reps and I did speak to other people there and said, why? I mean, this is years and years and years ago where I was really pushing. Why aren't we doing stevia? Why aren't we doing monk fruit? Why aren't we doing carbonated water that's not purified water? Like, why aren't you doing carbonated mineral water? And one of now, a bunch of these companies are doing that. Like, you can look at a bunch of people on my Patreon were just talking about Jocko. And I met Jocko when we were on tour with Dropkick Murphys. And hopefully, we'll get him on the podcast. But he saw a lane with his energy drink, and he is benefiting from where the Monsters and the rock stars and the other, they didn't see that lane. And now he's making probably millions because people don't want sucralose and they don't want the dyes and they don't want the refined sugar. And look, the people that do that, it's a free country, right? You're more than welcome to do that. But we are seeing the detrimental effects of that stuff, especially the dyes, especially the sucralose, which is, depending on which study you read, is wrecking people's gut biome. And I got a lot of flack for it. There was a lot of people that were like, you're pushing garbage onto your fans and these kids. And but I thought, well, let me get my foot in the door. I did drink the product. I did like it. I didn't go, the other route where it's like, oh, they're promoting Satan, and there's other theories around that brand. But I did think they could do better, and they should, because there's obviously a market for it. But people, who are smart, like Jocko and others, Highball is a great one. That's not even sweetened, but you get, the good B vitamins, the good creatine and taurine and these other things that nootropics and such that are stimulating and help you. I probably should have drank one. I'd be able to fucking get it out. But yeah, like sometimes you just got to get your foot in the door. And I love when I see people finding that lane and capitalizing on it, because the more we get people doing that, the more opportunities we're going to have. Like I would take a Jocko sponsorship right now because I tried it and I was like, wow, the drink is good and it's got monk fruit. It's not going to give me.
What I'm drinking in this is the Jocko energy drink. It's the only one I use. If you use this app called Yuka, YUKA, you can scan any product and it tells you the preservatives and whatnot in it. You can also even do a cosmetic product. So if your girlfriend's putting aluminum on her skin, on her biggest organ of her body and not even knowing it, you can check that. And then I use Element for my electrolytes because I fast all day. I only eat once a day and it kind of gets me through the day. And Element, Rob Wolf created Element, only has magnesium, potassium, sodium, and then he sweetened it with a natural sweetener, stevia, the stevia leaf. And without a doubt, these companies are out there, and Jocko makes awesome products. I got my kids off Prime, and they're drinking the Jocko hydration drinks because they did a great job with just making the bottle kind of look like a Prime bottle, and my kids like the taste of it. And it's you scan it, the Yuka app, no preservatives, nothing bad in it, and they like it. And so it's awesome that there's products like that. The problem with energy drinks is they're deceiving because they'll say sugar free, they'll say that it has B vitamins, but most of the time it's synthetic vitamins, synthetic caffeine, synthetic, artificial sweeteners. and all that stuff has to be digested and filtered through your body. And if your body doesn't like it, it can have negative effects on you. And I always say, like, you don't go from being healthy to sick overnight. It's like small, poor decisions that kind of add up in time, and then eventually one day you have an issue. And we talked about diseases before. Uh, Dr. Thomas Seyfried, he's from Boston University. He wrote a book called Cancer as a Metabolic Disease, has 150 peer-reviewed studies. Nobody looks into his research. And he's like, nobody cares that this guy basically is saying that a ketogenic, type of diet where you starve cancer cells of glucose, which we all know is an energy source, can actually help treat, cure, even prevent cancer. He's like, but there's no money in that. He's like, so who's interested in that? And I've had Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, the keto guy. I've had Dr. Sean Baker. A lot of people have been completely curing themselves of autoimmune issues with the carnivore diet, because you're eliminating any possibility of any other thing that could be having a negative effect in your body. I don't think meat is the cure all, but I think what you're doing is the process of elimination. You're removing all these things that could potentially be causing the issue, and then just kind of eating the one thing that since the beginning of human time we've been eating, and that's animal products. But again, like, there's not, if people come out and talk about these things, even during COVID, people were talking about remedies or alternatives, hydroxychloroquine, anything else. People were getting censored and banned. And in New York, they made it a political issue where Cuomo actually banned doctors from writing prescriptions, I believe, to hydroxychloroquine, which is like, wait, what are you doing making it a political issue? Like, this should be between the doctor and the patient. Like, you shouldn't be involved. So it's like, yeah, some of these conspiracies, like, just look into them. They're real, and they're not hard to believe. And so one thing I did want to talk to you about, because I'd love to get your perspective, because we did grow up in an era where bands like Napalm Death and Cannibal Corpse, and later on like Slipknot, and all these bands that were even your band, you had songs that were hopeful, but you also had a lot of dark songs. And when you see people like my dear friend, Sam Tripoli, talking about and Jay Dyer and others who've been on the show, and friends of mine who talk about like all the symbolism in art and all these pushing satanic imagery and all this stuff, from like my perspective, because I did grow up a metalhead and I was really into the industrial scene too. I love the dark industrial stuff. And I liked anything that was like, the darker, the more I felt like I shouldn't be listening to it, the more I was kind of attracted to it. And so to me, it's like, it's hard to figure out like how much of this is just artists, being artists, and that, I always say the best art is like you should create it like you're the only one who's going to see it. So you have no restrictions on it. You're not worried about how people are going to consume it or what their opinion is. You just kind of put no restrictions on your art, and that means it can lead down some dark paths and some go into some dark places. What's your opinion on some of the darker music now and the satanic symbolism and all that stuff, and or is it just artists trying to push the boundaries and trying to be a little shock rock?
I mean, there's definitely bands that live it, that we do festivals with, or that I've had on the podcast. And when they do really live it and they do really push it, it doesn't surprise me. I'd rather they be real about it and authentic about it, so that way you know what you're dealing with, especially if you don't want any of that in your orbit, right? Like, I just had Sonny from POD on, and we were going to have a debate with him. I pitched him a debate with him and Nurgle from Behemoth, who's, if you're going to be, I mean, everything he kind of does is really in line with, it's really on brand with that belief system, or with whatever I guess you would currently consider satanic, even to the point where the songs are now kind of catchy enough where normies are kind of drawn into it, and they like the aesthetic, and they like the look, and they like the live show and the fire. It's kind of like a safe way of engaging with the darker self, or the shadow self, or whatever, the dark passenger, or whatever the part of your ego, but without committing or making some sort of pact that you don't know about. But you got to be aware because there is a moral imperative. There is good and evil in the world. At least I think so. And so you have to be aware of that going into it. I talked about our former guitar player. You know, he was when he jumped in the dark river, there was no getting him out, and it caused a major falling out with us. And God rest his soul. I wish he could. I wish he was here now um to talk about that experience of being into the super satanic bands and also getting into drugs and getting into partying. And I wish he was here now to warn the youth, warn the fans about that because it all kind of works hand in hand. And it's all the dark river is always flowing. Anything can become destructive, right? There's porn, there's gambling, there's drugs, booze, I mean, even to a certain extent, fanaticism, right? We see fans in these fandoms, and especially uh, people getting completely fanatical about politicians um, and whatever else they got going on. That can become destructive, right? That can become obsessive and compulsive. So you have to balance it out, and you gotta, again, it's like you gotta vibe with your tribe. If back to Northampton, if fucking Rob Halford was leading the parade and invited me out there, I would go, right? And I would expect that Rob would be like, hey guys, let's not, if there's gonna be some kids here, there's gonna be, like let's keep it cool. Just like if we were gonna go see Behemoth, they're not gonna fucking sacrifice a goat. Like we have to have some sort of compromise. They might want to sacrifice a goat on stage and do some sort of fucking crazy ritual, but there's got to be like I said, like a grace period or a compromise. And then the people that want to go full in, they have to make that choice on their own. And they can't be duped into it, or they can't be coerced into it or groomed or whatever. They have to, everybody's an adult. We all have free will. You have to choose, right? If you want to do the Christian rock thing, like Sonny, we talked about Bible verses. We talked about his outlook on life. And some people, they don't want any of that. They want to just go listen to fucking black metal and satanic shit. And that's their choice. And I support their choice. I want them to have the freedom to do that. But then it also comes with consequences, right? So I say, again, judge everybody individually, try to make the most informed decisions. And I like talking about it all because if I ask one of these artists, like when I did episode 666, I had Glenn Benton from Deicide. I asked him a lot about it. He didn't really get into it. He didn't really engage on that level. So I thought, for him, it could just be more performative, or he could be being currently investigated, or I know he's had a lot of hard times in the past with DCS, where, if he said certain things in interviews, one of these people can become fixated on him and his business, and he might not want to talk about it on a podcast. His son is older now. His son is an adult. But should he have more kids, yeah, you might not want to be talking about your beliefs if they're not accepted by your current municipality or your current school board, because you live in a small town and people become interested in your business, or they want to meddle in your religious beliefs or whatever, then you could make an enemy. So
It's weird. I almost feel like film gets a pass, right? Because when you think about, this guy, Rob, he does Flick Connection. He's been on the show before. I love his channel, and it's he just basically gives you like top 10 most disturbing videos to watch on Prime. He just constantly gives you something to watch. So it does top 10 and whatnot. And so when he does a top 10 or top whatever disturbing films that like everybody has access to. It's either on Netflix or whatever. And he talks about sometimes when he's describing, he's like, listen, if you're easily disturbed by like content that is rape associated or this was associated, he's like, do not watch this film. And I just, I think about it, I'm like, this stuff's just out there. And it's like nobody goes to the filmmaker and says, hey, you sick fuck, like you should be in prison. It's like, for some reason it seems like musicians don't have the same type of like it's almost like if you're writing something, then people kind of feel like, hey, it's not just art, this represents you, instead of sometimes, like I remember the first time I heard the first self-titled Slipknot album. I remember thinking, I'm like, this is what it sounds like if you took the mind of a serial killer or somebody in the deepest, darkest depression, and then you some way converted it to music. That's what it kind of sounded like to me. And I'm like, but I love that. I love that because those dark things, those dark feelings, those dark, especially when you're a kid, and like the big, it's like they say the worst thing that ever happened to you is the worst thing that ever happened to you. Like when you're a kid, now as adults we look back like, why was I stressing about that shit? But like when you're a kid, that was the biggest thing to you at that time. And when you're in those dark places or you feel like you don't fit in, I was an immigrant from Portugal, and I came to America. That's why I think I was attracted to metal because I'm like, oh, these metal guys are just like me. They don't fit in, so we can be friends. And so it was one of those things where like I liked the music that went into those dark places. But
Yeah, you could safely engage with those emotions and not do something drastic or illegal or immoral, but you could still have an outlet and have a release and even have some sort of cleansing effect. I think the reason why the filmmakers get a pass, though, to go back to your question, is because they are not the figurehead. They're not so easily seen. Whereas with a musician, and this is why there's so many state influenced and state controlled like ops that are musicians, they have a little charisma can go a long way. They have intense influence, and you meet them. I mean, on those Slipknot tours, I mean, we were there when they were getting their first gold record, doing arenas in places where we couldn't even play to 50 people 6 months prior, like North Dakota. Now you have 10,000 kids in an arena in North Dakota, in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in Des Moines, Iowa, in Cedar Rapids, in all these places where, yes, this is going to be scary to government officials and to church leaders. And so it's going to be very scary because this is a real influence. These kids will do whatever Corey says, whatever Joey says, whatever a lot of the bands, whether it was us or Cold Chamber. I mean, you meet the kids at the meet and greet. I'll do anything for you. You're my favorite band. Your music changed my life. I have your lyrics tattooed on me. If you ever need anything, I'm there for you. I owe my life to you. I didn't kill myself because of you. So it's they're that's why people like Bob Marley, people like, I mean, we could go through the history of music. It's powerful. It's a powerful medium, a life-changing medium. Whereas I think with film, sure, they get a pass and you can say definitely maybe, if you watched a really disturbing movie, like I remember I watched this movie called Irreversible and I thought, why film this? Like, what is the purpose of this movie? And I thought, you know what? Yeah, maybe some sick fuck would watch this and think I want to go out and do that. But also, that's not in the filmmaker's control. That's not in the musician's control, unless you were literally saying that on stage or you're literally glorifying it in a film. Whereas in that film, it was so brutal, it was so drawn out, where it wasn't glorifying it. It was really fucking disturbing. And you would hope that people would go, God, I need to have more empathy for victims of this crime, this terrible circumstance. But also there's responsibility, right? You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You have to be, and then that's why I changed the lyrics from the first album. That's why there's no dark imagery on later albums, or if there was, it wasn't aimless. And that's probably why we didn't get a push and probably why we got out of the major label system as well, because, and I brought this up with Sonny from POD the other day, it's probably the same reason why they weren't really welcome anymore in the major label system or up for mainstream gigs, because what sells is the filthiest of the filthy, the most violent, the most dirty, or the most palatable but as vague and as non committed to a message, especially an uplifting message. maybe in country they can get away with it, but I think you'll find in country even now the ones that sort of lean sort of vague or sort of populist or even more about personal relationships, like no song that has an actual distinct message is going to get pushed to the forefront. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. You mentioned Slipknot. I mean, just look at what Clear Channel did. I mean, we all got screwed. They right after 9/11, they took everything off the radio. So we'll probably see that again. Should there be another sort of 9/11 event, you'll see the playlist will be heavily edited. I really don't wish that happens, but we'll see. But I think Cream rises to the top, and the ears that got to hear it, that need to hear the message, it finds the people. I mean, we were told, once you leave that major label system, good luck. And if you look, I think our biggest, songs with hundreds of millions of streams, our biggest song was through an indie. So it's possible. You got to strike while the iron's hot, and you have to have a strategy, you have to have a plan, you have to be able to cut through, and that's how you survive. And I think the same can be said for filmmakers. There's actually a really good Ridley Scott production right now on Netflix about Somalia and about the survivors of the famous Black Hawk Down October 3rd conflict. And it's really well done, and it actually talks to both sides. It's not like your typical recruitment, Go America type of film you would see. Like I think the movie is, right? Like the movie Black Hawk Down is probably I don't remember. I remember Josh Hartnett was in it, but I'll have to go back and rewatch it. But I remember it being like very rah-rah and very suspenseful, and like these guys are heroes. Whereas when you watch this, I suggest everybody to watch it. They actually talk to the Somalis and these guys were like, this was like my 40th gun battle. Like I'm a fucking hardened criminal. Like I'm a warlord. And they're sending in these little kids. And these were kids that a lot of them were our fans, people who joined, that was earlier. That was more in the early 90s, but a lot of them right after 9/11 joined, right? And went to Afghanistan. And my sister's older than me, a lot of her friends that were into metal and stuff went over in Desert Storm. So this was interesting to see because not only is it a Ridley Scott production, it's on a mainstream platform, Netflix, and it really does interview and shows warts and all of both sides. And it was fascinating.
Do you know the title of it?
I think it's called Surviving Black Hawk Down.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. That sounds really interesting. Yeah, one thing you said too about the really graphic film that you watched that could push somebody over the edge. I believe it was Ozzy or Black. Yeah, I think it was Ozzy song that some kid committed suicide to or something along those lines. And I think the attorney in court made a really good point. He's like, if this many millions of people listen to the song and didn't commit suicide, and this one kid did, he was probably like, if it wasn't this song, something else would have triggered it. He was obviously in a bad place. And I kind of look at everything like that, right? Like you can find evidence of like kids who play video games and become violent. You can also see tons of kids who play video games that aren't violent. Same thing with music. My parents were immigrants. All they did was work. They didn't know what I was listening to. And so they were too busy working. So I kind of had the green light to listen to whatever I wanted. And I turned out fine. And now, like, I sometimes hesitate as a parent to be like, hey, am I too worried about this? Am I turning into my parents? Right. And do you find yourself kind of having that same internal dilemma? Or do you?
I don't anymore because, like I said, I whenever I whenever I feel like that, I think, is that the dark river? Is that the devil? Like telling me, um, you know, be weary of this situation, or be isolated, or be fearful. And I'm doing this residency right now. I'll probably do 12 of these gigs. It's a small capacity place called the Cellar in Hamden, Connecticut. The February 20th sold out, but we're going to put another one on sale. There's going to be one every month this year. And I'm having all these thrash guests. And my team was like, "Are you sure you want to do this? It's such a small place." And I said, "We have to. We have so much talent that needs to be showcased." A buddy of mine, Joey C, they literally was just pulled from obscurity. He's like the next Zach Wild. He just joined Arch Enemy. They're about to have their biggest album come out, Blood Dynasty. It's coming out in March on Century Media. They're headlining my festival, Milwaukee Metal Fest. And he's my buddy. He's from Connecticut. He's from Milford. He's like one of these kids. He's just a savant. He's like it's just a guitar genius, and his guitar is his whole life. And those people are out there, but they don't have the advocates. They don't have the people championing them. And that's where guys like me have to come in and maybe put myself in a situation that's like, okay, we're going to be jammed in this place. It's not going to be like the arena with Slipknot. It's not going to be like, the MGM or Mohegan or the arena show. It's going to be a tight little place where people are going to try to sneak in and they're going to try to get backstage, and you're going to have all these issues. And the first show was like that. It was like, oh my God, some guy with face tattoos jumped the fence. He's looking for you. He's banging on the backstage door, and people are freaking out. Is there going to be a fight? It turns out it was an old guy that I knew, hadn't seen in 23 years. The show was sold out. And yeah, he jumped the fence. Luckily, there wasn't an active threat, and we didn't have somebody there like we did at Mohegan, where there was, ongoing threats, and they're calling me and saying, "Hey, man, make sure nobody tries to run on stage or whatever, because we're dealing with this other threat, and we got to make sure we neutralize it." Of course, some drunk idiot first song makes the beeline for the stage, and 40 fucking guards descend on him, and it's not the guy they're looking for. It's like the wrong place, wrong time, wrong drunk dude. But after I did the show, I thought, yeah, all that shit was the devil. All that shit was telling me not to do the show. People were so thankful. They couldn't believe we have Bobby from Overkill playing 120 cap place. People couldn't believe, we had all these guys there. We're doing these songs. We're shooting film for a music video. And yeah, it's a lot of work, but then little things started happening just from that interaction that night. Little things, like little seeds got planted. Now we're going to do one in Jersey. Bobby's going to come out. We've did one in Milwaukee. We're going to do one. Actually, they said to do one in Northampton or in I forget what the Apollo, the drummer kid. He's from Northampton, and there's a venue out there. They want to have us. So look, it's not going to be the biggest payday, but it's going to put one of these really super talented kids in front of the right person, and maybe they'll be the next one to join, a Hatebreed or an Arch Enemy or one of these bands that's been able to do this for 30 years as a career. I mean, that was always my goal. My goal was very similar to any of these other bands that we looked up to and emulated and started with. Slipknot, Slayer, all those bands. It was like they were all just, they knew they could not do the 9 to 5, and I knew I couldn't do that either. And I haven't done it since 1994 or 95. So, I want to be able to now put that ladder down for the other guy that's out, or girl that's out there, that can't do it like I couldn't do it.
That's so awesome, because artists are a unique breed. You've grown up around them, and I had a lot of friends who played music growing up, and anybody who was a artist usually wasn't business savvy, right? They didn't care about the ones and zeros. They didn't care about the money. They didn't care about, and in their defense, in most cases, or in many cases, I should say, that if you focus on just your art, then you're going to get the best art, and hopefully eventually that will blow up organically, right? I mean, Joe Rogan always talks about, and I've been listening to he was what inspired me with doing this show. That's why I have similar formats, and we both have like a lot of similar guests in regard, kind of like your show too, where you have people from all aspects of life and whatnot, because you're into a lot of different things and have friends in a lot of different places of the world. But everybody told him like nobody's going to listen to a 3 hour podcast. And he's like, I don't care. I'm just going to do what I enjoy. I enjoy having these long form conversations. Too bad. And when everybody else was having shorter podcasts, he just focused on doing his show. And you look at like a lot of musicians, same thing. Like I'm sure people told Slipknot, like, or Mushroom Head or whoever, like, hey, you can't have 9 people on the, on the payroll. You're not going to make any money. There's too many people. Like this isn't going to work. And eventually they broke through. And so having a mentor like you, somebody who can see it, like I've seen a lot of interviews with you, and listen to your show. You're obviously very just aware of like the strategizing and the things you have to kind of pay attention to get the most out of your work that you put in. And but a lot of artists don't do that. Do you think that you could, maybe the world needs more people like you who have been on both sides and you've run businesses. You've also been the young artist who just wants to put out music that they love and hopefully make money doing it. You think the world needs more mentorships like yourself to help out those younger bands?
Well, the information's out there now. It's just they might need to just be able to implement it and implement it in a way where you can see the results. I think once you see the results, and if you start to have success, you obviously then have to adapt and overcome each challenge. That's very hard for creatives. And when I'm being judgmental of myself or being critical of myself, I think, okay, yeah, I could have done this differently, or maybe I was wrong about a certain situation or a certain platform or someone working at a certain platform, whatever. But when you're brought new evidence, you got to be able to consider that, and you have to be able to see how it applies to you and your business or your creative process. It's different for every person, and there's a lot of ego involved, right? There's a lot of people that there's artists, you bring a horse to water, you can't make them drink. That's always going to happen, and I get it. But with me, I always said, I'm going to infiltrate the system. Shout out to Madball. I'm always going to get my foot in the door. Like I'm not going to worry about. I had to have thick skin growing up, regardless, because that was just the era. It was like everybody. There was always a bigger dude or a crazier group of kids, and it was every man for himself. So I never, I guess, cared like, okay, I'm gonna go work at MTV. I'm gonna do the hosting job. I'm gonna try to get my foot in the door and see, can we get Napalm Death Plate? Can we? Because I had already gotten every door shut in my face at that point. It was like, no, we're not gonna play the video. Well, we had Mark Webb direct it. He directed, NSYNC and Green Day. Nope, we're not going to play it. We don't like the screaming. No one wants to hear your voice like this. So I said, okay, the only way I'm going to get my video played is if I become the fucking host. And same thing with these big sponsors or like the big films, you're going to sign to Universal. No hardcore band ever signed to Universal. Are you fucking crazy? Yeah. Well, hey, listen, I was just in North Dakota and South Dakota with Slipknot, and my record is nowhere. They only have Walmart and Best Buy. I got to get it into a distributor that can get it out there to those 10,000 kids I just played to at both arenas. Let's do it on Universal. But you got to be able to deal with the fallout of that. The second you put out something creative, the people are waiting to shit on it. And I've seen it just destroy people. I've seen, and I wish I could teach them to grow thick skin, but that's a very hard thing to do. And I see it with filmmakers, I see it with authors, with so many different creatives where they'll do something and people just don't fucking get it and they shit all over it, and it really sets them back. But I also try to say that for every 10 people that don't like your work, there's literally 6, 8, I don't know, billion people that don't know who the fuck you are that might like it. And that's how I view it with my solo stuff, with Hatebreed, with my project stuff. I mean, I shot that D Snyder record, and I know they're very critical of D. Some people love him, some people, he's pissed off recently, but everybody shut the door in my face. And then I got him a great deal, and the record did great. It was one of the biggest selling physical records of that year. So everybody bought the CD and the vinyl, and I got to say to all those labels, all right, I told you so. They, sometimes you just have to show and prove too. So um, you can have a great mentor, but until you show and prove, you're always going to be dealing with that, with the naysayers and with the doors getting slammed in your face. And it's just like for every door that gets slammed, you got to find the next one where you can try to kick it in and get your stuff heard and seen.
Yeah, I think artists take things so personally because their art is so personal, right? Like you invest so much into it. It's so personal. And then when somebody just kind of shits on it, quickly, they don't try to understand it. They don't try to, or the fact that they even take time to shit on it, where it's like, don't you have better things to do? If you don't like it, just move on, that type of thing. And so yeah, that sucks. And I remember I had Mike Martin on. He's some people listening, it was a long time ago, but from All That Remains, a guitarist. He's from Ludlow, the town I'm from. So is Mike Mushak from Stained. Not that's about our Hall of Fame right there for musicians.
Yeah.
But
And that's a good Hall of Fame.
yeah, it is pretty good. Yeah. And so but Mike is I remember when I had him on and we did an in-person conversation, which like you, I love because it's just you can connect with people in a way that just, nothing against Skype or Zoom. I think it's a great tool to use, but when you're in person, there's a casualness and a feeling of each other's energy and stuff that you kind of miss on Skype or Zoom. But he was really outspoken. Like he was willing to talk about anything. I'm like, Mike, is there anything like you don't want to talk about? Maybe you're worried about pissing off. And he's like, no, I don't care. And Phil, who's a regular on Timcast, who if people don't know Phil from All That Remains, the singer, that guy that's always on Timcast, the musician, great band, also from this area. He very outspoken, right? And some guys just don't care, right? They're just going to be like, hey, people are going to hate, people are going to hate, and I think that's kind of the right attitude. It's like I always tell people, I'm like, listen, if you can look in the mirror and you feel like, hey, I've done everything out of the sincerity out of my heart. I never purposely try to harm anybody or piss anybody off or whatever. Like, who cares what everybody else thinks? Like,
Yeah.
as a
Because
podcast,
because the tribe is out there, they're gonna find it, they're gonna be down with it. And Phil was always like that whenever I had him on the show. I liked having Phil on my show, and he's always welcome on my show because it was nice to not have an echo chamber, and he would be the first one to say, hey, maybe don't word it like that, or maybe don't think about it like that. And I always appreciated that. And also he was really ahead of the curve on like Bitcoin. He's mining his own Bitcoin back then, and just and yeah, like whatever he might sacrifice now with maybe not being known or being popular in Europe, which is most metal bands bread and butter. I think they can make up for it with strategically touring in the States, and he can also, have his other career as a broadcaster and a podcaster. And yeah, and people want authenticity. They want people that are firm on their opinions and firm on their beliefs. And but also they want people that are willing to, you bring them new evidence and they can not be so stuck in their bubble, and they can change their opinions when they know it's when maybe they've been unreasonable or perhaps misled. And he's always seemed like a pretty level-headed guy to me. But I've had people say to me, oh, he's out of his fucking mind. And it's funny because either way, the metal media will use it against you. They'll try to they'll put up clickbaits shit anyways. So you might as well be authentic. You might as well be as unedited as you can be, as you're comfortable being, without torpedoing, your career. But even then, we see it now where with the exception of, say, maybe Tim Lambesis, we've seen guys and girls who've been canceled or who've been pigeonholed into one sort of lane that might not be the acceptable lane at the current whatever the current sort of social media overlords want. They're still able to be very successful and be very outspoken. You look at Marilyn Manson. I mean, there was a time where I thought maybe he won't come back. And now the record's getting rave reviews, the shows are selling. Um, so, and if you believe that he's whatever reformed or he's Christian or he's sober or not, if you like the music and you're able to separate, the art from the artist, he has every right to. He wasn't convicted of anything. He has every right to be out there trying to pay his bills, and the market decides. The people decide, right?
Yeah. Do you find yourself doing that? Do you have like no, obviously you had Tim from Aslay dying on. Um,
Yeah, and I would have Manson on. I would have Ronnie Radke on. I'd have Alex Terrible on. I don't want to be told who I can't and can talk to. Of course, there are going to be people who will go hard in the paint to try to silence us and try to make that not happen, or maybe boycott the show or whatever. And you got to be able to deal with that too. Um, but I mean, look at Skanks, look at Lewis, like look at what they've done. They've had their YouTube deleted. I have equity in the network, and they pay me every month. I'm not, I don't have to. They don't tell me who I can, what I can, who I can have on, who I can't have on. They've never edited one thing. That's always what I wanted. If I went and had an outside sponsor, say, like when I had Bonnie Rotten on, and actually she was at ESPN or she was in Bristol doing something. At that point I had never had an adult actress on. And I was like, I don't really want to do the Howard Stern thing. I don't really, that's not my thing. And I'm not like, I think porn is like the dark arts. Like I really don't want to engage with that at all. Like I I'm so much happier in my life and my relationships, and everything is so much better when I'm years removed from watching anything pornographic. I don't know why. It just is. And some people go, "Oh, you're fucking crazy. Like I gotta, go on whatever Pornhub and jerk off or whatever." So I get it, but you could also have an addictive gene, or it could also become destructive. But I thought she's down for metal. She's always super cool. Let's go see what she has to say. And I had a sponsor say, "Oh, we don't want our ads." They didn't pull the sponsorship. They said, "We don't want our ads on that show." And I had a lot of people that were pissed off that I would have, a porn star on there. But now she's retired. I just DM'd her a couple months ago. How are you? How you been? Great to hear from you. Was married to Jesse James, out there shooting guns, living her best life, and has distanced herself from that world. And I thought, man, I would have her back on now. And that's interesting to me, the journey from that world to her current world. And um, I wonder if the sponsor would care now. Like you were taking a stand then, and what did you gain out of it? Like, was it did you prove anything by pulling your ad off the one show? Like, did it matter? I don't know.
well, I think the other interesting thing, and I can see it with just your interviews, is much like myself. Like there's nothing wrong with trying to understand people, right? Like it's like that saying, hurt people hurt people. A lot of times, somebody that you're like, oh, this is a horrible person, learn a little bit about their background, their upbringing, and then you like, oh, it makes sense. Like now I can see like there's some trauma, and there's even like epigenetics trauma, right? Like the mouse experiment where they would spray a synthetic scent and shock the mice, and then so it was a scent that they never were exposed to in the natural world, and they would shock the mice. So naturally, every time they smelled that scent, they would have a panic reaction. Well, for 2 generations later, the mice that have never been shocked, they would spray that scent. They inherited that fear of that scent. So it's like sometimes we're not even just dealing with trauma that we lived, but even like maybe possibly trauma from our parents, grandparents down, the DNA line. And so to me, like it's
No, that's a good point. I I would apply that same sort of thinking to this fake sort of perceived morality, right? Like that could be programmed into someone where they're just defensive about anything that they um, disagree with or makes them uncomfortable. And they might go, I think of you as one sort of way, and I think of your show as one sort of way. And then when you deviate from that, it's a shock to me or whatever. And all I'm saying is, did it did it make you feel better? Did it help in any way? Like I could see if a band wants to cancel, say, South by Southwest because it's obviously funded by some companies. Like if you were a punk rock band that was totally anti-war, yeah, you might want to cancel South by Southwest and make a statement. Is it going to change anything long term? No, but you have the right to do it. And I want you to do what's in your heart and what is authentic to you. But don't judge the other bands that are doing it, right? Like it doesn't mean because they're doing it, this is what they're co-signing. They're going there with a dream to sell records, get on bigger tours, hopefully get a better career. And so that's what I thought about when I was going to potentially talk to this porn star. Like maybe this is just a stepping stone, or maybe this is a way to get famous. And yeah, okay, you're sacrificing maybe long-term credibility, or maybe how people judge you, or maybe you'll have intimacy issues in later relationships. I remember thinking about all this stuff before, and I'm like, how do I broach this? Do I even want to talk about this stuff? Like, do we not 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 just the physical aspects of it, of like, you're giving a part of yourself to somebody who maybe doesn't deserve it, if you wanted to think, from a more spiritual type of thing, but that's the journey they're on. I'm not in that journey, but don't think you're better than me because you're saying I'm not going to advertise on this episode, or I'm not going to listen to this episode. You're not better than me by saying that. You're just peacocking or virtue signaling or whatever they call it, right? When you might have listened to it and got a different perspective, and it's not like I'm out there promoting this career path to young girls. I would never do that.
But there's also something nice about trying to understand it, right? I think like locking it away in a corner and saying this is evil, this is bad, and not trying to
Oh,
human.
that's promoting it.
If-
That's going to get more people. Like that's like the prohibition. Like more people probably drink because they're not of age or whatever, or it's I
It,
remember on Sunday when they used to not sell booze on Sunday, that was the day everybody wanted the fucking booze. Everybody. Like it was like, we got to drive to New York to get it. We got to drive up to Mass to get like there was something about not being able to get it on Sunday that made people want it even more. Oh, we got to watch it during football, or there's a hardcore matinee, or we need, the band needs it on their writer. I remember the band AC, and I hate God, they played the skate park and I booked it, and on a Sunday or yeah, I think it was on a Sunday because they were like, oh my God, we can't get whiskey. What the fuck? They were losing their minds. So but yeah, whatever you engage with, you have to go into it knowing like, all right, especially if you're susceptible, if you're going into that and you're susceptible to anything, you have an addictive personality, or you have a previous issue with abuse, or you have a previous problem with porn addiction or gambling, like don't I'm but obviously if you have a previous problem with gambling, you don't want to go listen to me on some fucking bookies show where we're handicapping, the fights or something, right? It could trigger something that could cause you to go down if you're impressionable.
yeah, and I think a lot of those issues are internal; they're not external, right? Like a lot of are you familiar with like the Rat Park experiment?
Yeah, and listen, I know people, I've seen it. I've seen guys come backstage, do a line of coke, and then they don't do a line of coke for 3, 4 years. Go on 2 world tours, and they never need it. And there are people like that. For me, one sip of wine, one beer is too many, and 1,000's not enough. I can't do that. But there are people that can do things in moderation. I'm sure porn is one of them. I can't. So I don't.
Yeah,
But I'm not saying that's how everybody has to be. Just like when, um, like there was a band, the Melvins, Buzz. He was probably my worst guest on the podcast, and he was. I didn't research well enough. I hadn't watched enough of his content, and I was off. He was off. We were both having off days. I still put the episode out. I was like, fuck it. He went on some show, like a right wing leaning show. And his fans just they went fucking berserk. I'm breaking all your records, I'm disowning the band, all this stuff. And meanwhile, it's like we got to take any fucking interviews we can take out here. I mean, this is a band that like that's a band that tours in a van still. Like I remember we just played Milwaukee last year and we're playing the big room and Melvin's were playing a small room. I saw the van pull up and I see this dude get out. I'm like, holy shit. I didn't even know they were playing the same. I saw no marketing for it. I saw nothing. I'm like, these guys are fucking road dogs, like respect. I didn't get time to go say what's up. I wish I did because I would have said, hey, sorry about the shitty podcast we did together. But I remember thinking respect because they'll take any interview, they'll take any gig, but they've done it at the biggest level. They've toured with White Zombie, toured with Kiss, and influenced fucking Nirvana. Incredibly talented, great songwriters, great vocals. But the fans were so fickle, they would literally turn their back on the band over one interview. He didn't even know who the interviewer was or why he was doing it. He just did it like he would any other interview. And none of those people are better morally, are better in their lives spiritually. Like, no, it's always the ones that are so fucking judgmental that are either hypocrites or they're just assholes and you don't want them as fans anyways. So you might as well be authentic. You might as well talk to everybody you can talk to, get your message out there, get your music out there, because no one else is going to fucking do it. Certainly not I would be very surprised if there was any active rock stations left that play Melvins. And I'm not talking about on the overnights at 2 a.m. on the metal specialty show. I'm just talking in general.
What did inspire your clean lifestyle? Because I mean, you don't consider yourself a straight edge. I don't think, right? But you
No, I don't. And I don't want to come off as 100% sober because like last year I was in Amsterdam and I had a pot gummy, which I'm not doing those anytime soon. And I've had I haven't touched booze. Like my main thing is I just don't drink. I haven't touched booze because to me booze is truly evil. Like I think booze maybe not in the next 10 years, 20 years, but I think one day we will look at it as the way we look at cigarettes. And I just think that there's conditions that a lot of people have that I really feel like could be correlated. I know that correlation doesn't equal causation, but I think there's also uh,
you
there's lobbyists, there's big money behind to obscure it, like there has been with sugar and tobacco and other things in the past that were proven to be
do
detrimental long
your
term.
opinion of that is because you've been around, I mean, obviously huge metal band, you toured with some of the biggest shows ever, with some of the biggest bands ever. A lot of alcohol abuse was going on. Do you think that shaped your perspective on alcohol?
Well, yeah, and look, I mean, shit, man, we've done the Jägermeister tour. We've done the big festivals that are sponsored by Camel or sponsored by, one of the vodka brands, and um, it doesn't always feel great because you don't want to promote it. You want people to go into it with a healthy bit of skepticism, especially if you have that in you. I always go back to that. Like you could be the guy that you have one vodka and Red Bull and you never look back. But you could also be the guy that then goes and beats his wife and kills his kids in the car and drives off a cliff or whatever. Um, and I just don't want to have that energy. But yeah, I see it every show where people can drink responsibly and get home and they had a great time at the show. And I'm like, okay, great. There's nothing I can do about it. It's legal. It's we've toured with straight edge bands, Earth Crisis, all these bands, and that's part of their music. My thing is more, um, especially now, my thing is more about singing about stuff I haven't sang about in the past. So I can expound on old topics and get deeper into them if I have a new take or I have a new wrinkle in what I'm trying to, put in the message. But I also like now I do songs that aren't about me at all, and that's also really liberating and really free. I did a song with Zetro from Exodus on this one called Assimilation Agenda, which is literally just about the surveillance state and all these cameras everywhere and all these fucking instances of the phones recording us and the laptops recording us and the apps spying on us and things like that. And that was a really fun, cool song to write. And Zetro loved it from Exodus because the thrash bands tried to warn us about this. I mean, think about all those early Exodus, Megadeth, especially Megadeth, Metallica. They were ahead of the game, and it's like now it's like history is repeating itself. I mean, they were writing this stuff pre-Patriot Act, pre-COVID, and so now I was like, yeah, all right, I might be deboosted, shadow banned, or whatever, censored, but it needs to be out there. People need to protect themselves, especially when you see so many people being debanked and targeted for their beliefs and for their just trying to a lot of times it's just trying to help people.
Well, I think since the beginning of time, there's been people and people who want to control those people. And today, we, like you said, history repeats, or at least if it doesn't repeat, it rhymes. We live in similar times, but it's like that saying, the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing you it didn't exist. I think the elite have played that trick. Like they've convinced a bunch of people they don't exist, that the power is in our hands, that we have control. We live in this great new world where there's democracy and whatnot. When the truth is, like, we really don't have any choice where our tax money goes. We don't have a choice if we want to get into a war or not get into a war. And they'll use propaganda, they'll use lies, they'll use controlling, they'll use surveillance to kind of push us in those directions. And I mean, look at Fear Factory. Burton C. Bell, we talked about this when he was on the show about how
Yeah,
had
he was way far ahead. I
it,
mean, seriously, I've been targeted when in the past, it was punk rock. It was like, okay, I'm going to dodge this warrant. I'm going to dodge this ticket. I'm going to escape this. And then once the computer started communicating and the jurisdiction started communicating, they really came down on me hard. And something I did in Texas came back to bite me in the ass. Something I did in Rhode Island came back to bite me in the ass. And then it got to the point where it was like, all right, now my passport's going to get taken away. Now my license is going to get taken away. Then when I went to court and when I went to handle these situations, I was targeted. I was on film. My license plate was being recorded, the make and the model of my car. Like I went to go and settle something up in Worcester and got a ticket going there, literally with my Easy Pass. Like I literally got mailed a ticket. I went to the courthouse in New Haven and they're waiting out there. They're literally waiting out there to catch people who are just trying to get out of the rat race. They're just trying to get out. And it really reinforced why I got into music to begin with, because I was like, I can't be poor and I can't do this. I can't be in this system. I have to get out of it. I have to get to the point where I can also warn people about this system, because it's a predatory system of getting caught in these fines and then the interest on the fines and then and I've seen it. I've seen it with my uncle. I've seen it with other people where it breaks people, where you can't get it. Like I remember going and visiting Whaley Avenue Jail, visiting my uncle, and you couldn't bring in, you'd have to rip like articles out of a magazine. You couldn't bring in a whole magazine. You have to bring in certain type of socks because they don't want people hanging themselves with the socks. Certain like type of material. And I remember one time he literally was going to turn himself in and then got in trouble going to turn himself in. Like got and I thought, yeah, like I can't do this. I need to get on the straight and narrow. I can't. But I talk a lot about stuff like that on this record, which is, but I also get into stuff that's new for me, like not my typical sort of lyrical content, which is fun too.
Yeah, well, the Easy Pass, it's funny because when they first implemented that and they got rid of the physical person who would give you a ticket, there was like a lawsuit about them trying to get an answer for how long they're going to keep those records because there was no like understanding of like, okay, you know where I'm traveling all the time, what speeds and whatever you're taking pictures of my car, like how long do you keep that? And I don't know if they ever got to the bottom of it, but I've had Thomas Drake on, the NSA whistleblower, and I mean he influenced Edward Snowden. I mean they ruined his life, and you know all he was doing was basically exposing the fact that they're paying attention and listening to everything, and they're not just doing that. I mean they're and you saw it during the last couple elections, and you know it got exposed even more. Where based on a social media's worldview, they'll just change your perspectives of the world, right? Because if you control the information, you control what we think. Our thoughts and our ideas come from the information we can consume. If you're controlling that information we're consuming, you basically more or less are controlling us. And that's a huge issue. There's a great documentary called the psychology or State of Mind, the Psychology of Control, and it goes through the whole history of how they've controlled people and how the elites have always molded our thoughts and our ideas. And I mean, we do it now. We've done it historically in coups and all over the world, in Guatemala and in Iran and you know, all these coups where they have a revolution and come to find out we're pushing and molding that revolution to put in power somebody we want in power. And, you know, obviously
Yeah,
they,
and the same thing happens in the music world and in the corporate world, especially in TV and just my short time in TV. You would see it, you would know, you go, how is this person just coming out of the blue and getting this gig? And then okay, well, they're towing the line and they're going to, add this and really push a certain agenda or a certain message and listen to the higher ups and not go off script. And the the less that you can be controlled, the quicker that you're out of there. Um, and but I think that's good. I think it's all been exposed now where that's not like none of those gigs are revered like they were. It's even to a certain extent now where I think like we when we got into Triple X, the film, I was out in LA and shout out to Dom. I was in Dom's store and he said Vin Diesel's out back. He wants to say what's up. And I had heard that he wore our shirt at like the New Zealand premiere. And I knew that all we needed was the one because I had seen already the bands that like I didn't if I was going to be a one hit wonder, I was like, that's the one. And that'll be, I saw bands that were still together that could go sell out Toads, sell out the Sting, sell out big clubs. And then I saw the bands like the Ramones and stuff where I would pull up to Toads. I couldn't believe the Ramones were in a van. I thought the Ramones, they're fucking huge. They got hit after hit, but they were a working class band and they were a career band but they still got on mainstream shows. They were on Howard Stern, they were on Letterman, they were on and they were on major labels at one point too, but never changed the punk rock sound. So I thought, okay, yeah, like the hardcore kids might call me a sellout because I'm over here with Vin Diesel and I got the song in the movie. But I thought this could propel me. This could keep me at cruising altitude for the next 20 years. And it kind of did. I mean, of course, now that's probably our sixth or seventh biggest song. That probably has 20 million streams, and there's others that have 50 or 100. But it's a huge song in the set, and um, as I saw the way that industry was going, because I went there, I went to Revolution Films. I was with the director, and I saw the footage on the green screen and stuff, and I thought, I don't know how long this is going to be a thing. Like, is the next generation really going to care about? Because to me, it was already done. Like the days of Arnold and Stallone. I mean, and even Van Damme, like it was done. And I thought, man, I hope Vin carries the torch and does that. But whenever he tried to do something different, it didn't work. Like when he tried to do Riddick or when he tried to do other stuff. And then from there, really, who have we seen besides Statham or The Rock? But even then, when you look at it, is there prestige? Like if you got your song in a Jason Statham film, is it going to be a career changer? Is there prestige to that? Or if you got your song in a film with The Rock right now, is that a game changer? Does that come with prestige? I don't know. I don't really think so.
That's interesting. I mean, you think so deeply about these things, and I feel like when you're a young musician, obviously when you're writing, Satisfaction, the Death of Desire, your first, major album, it, and I believe it was, I mean, let me just mention for listeners who don't know how awesome Hatebreed is. I mean, Grammy nominated. I believe, Satisfaction, Death of Desire was one of the highest selling hardcore albums of all time. I mean, you've done some phenomenal work, and at that time, uh, you're inspired by obviously like personal feelings and situations and your life journey. Now, because of all the business aspect of it, as you get older, does that ever maybe negatively, or do you consciously make it an effort to like not let specific things like, okay, this song would be a great hit or whatever, like get in the way of you during the artistic a journey of writing a song?
I there's a song off Concrete Confessional that we probably should have made a single called Serve Your Masters. And it was, and actually there's another song on there too. It's probably our only political song. There's a song called AD, which stands for American Disease. And I wrote it while I was watching all the fallout from the Bataclan shooting. It was a venue, that we had played, and it was a band that we had just seen. I was just talking to the dude prior. They were playing Philly the same night as us, and and I was like, okay, I'm I'm not doing this again. I'm not gonna do this where they get everybody all riled up when we go into fear mode. And there's a line in that song, and it's like, turn on the TV for the shooting spree, get distracted while they take your civil liberty. Thoughts and prayers again, if that's what it'll take, which industry thrives while lives are at stake. And it, although people called it political, it's really sort of apolitical because it doesn't matter what side you're on. It, this type of thing affects both. It affects us all, and it feels like the reverberation is felt really worldwide. Um, and we had already been through like the death of Dimebag. I mean, that was a huge thing. I mean, we had just left them, and we were like, all right, we'll see you at this festival. And then, not even a month later, he's literally shot on stage. I mean, when was the last time an artist was shot on stage and killed? A massive artist, a game changer of an artist. Then you have years later, obviously, uh, people, opening fire at a show, and we don't have to go down that whole rabbit hole, but it seemed very strange. Still, to me, it seems very strange. And I thought, all right, I'm just gonna have to put this out there. And even though there was no marketing behind either of those songs, they've become hits in their own right. Like they found the ears. Like they have more streams than some of our songs that have videos, and some of our songs that were actually marketed to radio and were on major labels. And we're not, like, some of those songs have bigger streams than the ones that we got nominated for a Grammy for. And the subject matter is not exactly commercial or marketable, um subject matter, especially when you're saying, um, so they'll sell us the cure for the American disease while creating the problem. But it finds, the ears that it has to find, and I just hope that for every artist that's out there. I hope that for every creative who's struggling, that's where you get your vindication. That's where you get your wins, is when someone finds the jam that they go, that's my jam. And it wasn't through manipulation. It wasn't through buying followers, or it was just through word of mouth, or just because it was a quality piece of art. And that's the best. Like, I feel like that's really all you need at the end of the day. I feel like if you're really authentic, and you're tapping into whatever it is out there that we can all tap into, the ether or the before or the after, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know how woo woo we want to get. And I have a show actually that I got to start at 7. So I got to run. But I mean, when you lock in and you tap in, the world somehow finds it, and it resonates. And then it, like you said earlier, then it lives multiple lives onward. Look at the great James Brown, for instance. As much as you want to say, okay, he did this or he did that, or this was questionable or whatever, like, you throw on that fucking James Brown, and that dude is fucking putting it down. I mean, it is straight fire. Like, even his like guest spots, even his cameos on other shit. Like, he saw Biohazard. Biohazard has a great story about them, where he was just at Roskilde watching Biohazard just fucking crush, just level like 20,000 people. And he's like, yo, these white motherfuckers, these are real motherfuckers. Like, these motherfuckers. And he was like, he went up to Biohazard and was like, yo, respect.
Well, I think real recognizes real, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think when people are killing, no matter what genre you're in, and they're truly motivated and passionate about whatever they're doing, you recognize that, and I think that's why great athletes from different sports, the greatest of the greats, appreciate each other. Similar thing with musicians, but I know you got to go. Next time,
Yeah, and all it takes is one, Ricky. Like, one person. All it takes is one. We see it time and time again. The athlete thing is a great thing to mention, because one guy doesn't break a record for 10 years. The second somebody does, it sparks something in the brains of the others, and then you see it like boom, 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 and now it's been broken 10 other times. One guy holds their breath for 2 minutes. Now a guy's holding his breath for 7 minutes. Now another guy's holding his breath for fucking 10 minutes. We're going to see the same thing with cancer. We're going to see the same thing with the exposure of all this fucking bullshit. All it takes is one, right? We're going to see people like Lynn Tagger, people like uh, RJ Spina, like in that healing world, in that homeopathic world. All it's going to take is proof that this can happen, and the belief, and then boom, it's going to start compounding. We're almost there, man.
yeah, it just takes somebody to break that matrix, break through the mold. And you see it with Robert Kennedy Jr. When I had my kids, just questioning vaccinating or not doing the vaccination schedule, I was a lunatic. I mean, people were fighting with me, telling me I was putting my kids at risk. Now
Yeah.
we're openly having this discussion and
And
open.
the hit pieces are going to come, and they're going to come hard, and they're going to come fast, and you got to be able to discern it all, and you got to be able to, like, look, they're going to go hard. It's not going to be easy. And that, I always say that about the people in music that are doing the different, like, if you're going against any official narrative, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it, because it will find the audience, and it will find the ears and the eyes that it needs. And then that person that's affected positively from it, now you've just done something. You've created meaning, you've created purpose. Um, yeah, man.
That's what we're all looking for. Yeah. I mean, and it really the most important thing is just finding meaning and purpose and, leaving a legacy that people can learn from and grow from. So I can't thank you enough, Jamey. People listening, he truly is as nice as he sounds. He
Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate the time, man. And all the best to you. And we'll do it again one of
definitely,
these days.
if you're
Come
ever,
down to Thrash Thursday. We'll put you on the list.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll buy you dinner, and or if you're ever in these neck of the woods in Western Mass, I'll take you out to eat. We'll chat some more and talk, and also I'll send you the videos and audio links to for your Patreon supporters first, so they can check it out first. Because I feel bad that they were kind of left out of this when they thought they were going to be able to join. So I'll send you that. So feel free to share with them first.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
And thank you, Jamie. Sorry for holding you up. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day to chat for as long as you did. And let's
Anytime, brother. Thanks for having me on.
hey, take care, Jamie.
All right, Ricky, have a good one.
You too. Take care.